Hey, what's up? This is Ryan from After the Blast. Back in October, I finally upgraded to the Axe 3. So I've been spending a lot of time getting to know the new interfaces and exploring new sound options that I have. Today, I'm going to go over how I set up for multiple input sources and how I'm preparing for automated patch changes. I've owned the Axe 2 since 2016, and I absolutely loved it. One of the aspects I was most excited about was the ability to automate my patch changes via MIDI. That prompted the need to have our songs mapped out in a DAW, so that way those patch changes occurred exactly when the parts changed. At the same time, we added effects to vocals in time with the songs, and we've now incorporated lighting into our set as well. So a lot of things happened all at once when I got the Axe 2. The way I set up my automation, we used Ableton Live as our DAW for this. So what I liked about Ableton was in session view here, these scenes, in my mind, correlated well to different songs. So I liked that I was able to kind of set this up. You can click and drag and rearrange the scenes to kind of rearrange your set list. And that was great. I was able to do a lot of things with this, and it was very effective for the time. The automation for the Axe effects resides entirely on one track, one clip per song. So if I click on Coming Home here, for example, most of the automation occurs in envelope 34, which is the scene changes for the Axe 2. So all these represent the 8 different scenes that you can have on the Axe effects, and they're timed out exactly with the song. This one's pretty simple. The other two here, 20 and 21, are mapped to externals. Number 20 is mapped to a volume, so you can see that automation curve here. And 21 is the panning for my guitar. So there's a little bit of left and right panning on this song. One of the big drawbacks with this approach was that this automation line inside the clip does not have any correlation with the song parts. So it was really difficult and time consuming to figure out where exactly does this line need to be drawn in order to be timed out with the song. A couple years ago, I discovered a plugin for Ableton called Ableset. Ableset is an absolute game changer to how I set up my Ableton file. The interface here is actually run on the browser. This is the setlist view, and if I wanted to manipulate this, let's say we need to make this considerably shorter. Let's take out I Can Feel You, Break Me Down, No Holy Diver, No You're Gonna Pay, but we want to end with The Drug Is Your Disease, so we can click and drag and move these things around. Hit save, and my favorite feature is it actually updates the set time for all of these songs, which actually that's the primary reason I sought this plugin out. So now here I can launch a song, and that actually triggers Ableton to play. So not just the song, one of the other limitations to the session view in Ableton is you can't play individual parts if you have a scene per song. With Ableset, I'm able to go in and jump right to a part. So that was extremely powerful. It's been great for practice, and we've been able to get to the spot that we need to a lot faster. The other side to Ableset is the performance view. So this tells you what song you're in. It gives you the notes of, in my case, which tuning I need, BPM, time signature, length of the song, part of the song, what part's next, what song is next, and another really powerful thing is lyrics. And these are timed right out with the song. So if I hit play, it's great. You can have lyrics set up for not just one vocalist, but for many. And it's great for a band like mine that does not play and practice too very often. So it's helpful for us backup singers. Do I need to harmonize right here? Or let's say you've got a guest vocalist who's coming on in and they need to learn the song on the fly. You can set this up. This doesn't only run on my computer here. Is if you have a router, you can connect your phone or your tablet to this and get these same views. So Ableset is just totally amazing. The The developer has been great, Leo. I've even reached out for some features. The time signature, I believe, was one of my requests. Was, hey, can we show the time signature? And he went ahead and got it done within like a week. So I love Ableset. Back in Ableton, Ableset reads the file a little bit differently than I have it set up here in Session View. So rather than reading the scenes, Ableset reads Session View, and it looks for cues on the timeline. So if you lay out all of your songs for, say, a band or for a set onto the timeline here, these different cues indicate the start of a song or the end of a song, and Ableset knows to jump to the correct parts once it hits those markers. Within that, the parts of the song are split up into different MIDI clips. So back in Session View, you could not split the parts of the song if you are doing one scene per song into multiple clips, but in Arrangement View here, you can do that. Underneath, you can see they have the lyric lines, so each line of lyric is a different cue here, and you just you name the title of the clip what you want the lyric to say. And he's got a great plugin to generate this a lot faster. It's great. But like I said, you can have more than one vocalist. So here's Dylan's lines, here are my lines, and here's Tim's lines, and they all land in different spots, but you can ask your phone or your computer to look at a different one of these, so that way the karaoke words show up exactly where you need them to. Back on the Axe-Fx, let's talk about inputs for a little bit. On screen right now is the Axe Edit for my Axe-Fx 2, and this was sort of a typical setup that I would have for 2 guitars. Now, I was dissatisfied with the idea that I had a perfectly mapped out set of patch changes and sounds, but my singer did not. So I figured out a way to get 2 guitar signals to run independently here, and that worked fantastically for us. But it came with a few trade-offs. So as you can see, the CPU is pushing 86 right now. Once it hits about 90, that's when it starts to crackle and give you artifacts that you never want to hear. So I had to do a lot of things to conserve CPU on this. So for most patches, I have just 1 cab instead of 2 for each guitar. Now, what that means is then these 2 signals are 1 signal, a stereo signal, but 1 signal nonetheless. And that meant that Dylan and I had to share a mix, and that worked fine for me because I was used to listening to the flat mix. But when he's singing and his guitar part's often sometimes the quieter of the 2 parts, it would get lost in what he could hear. So it was just a challenge for him to be able to hear that. Some other adjustments I would make to conserve CPU: in the cab block, I would have to set the preamp to economy instead of high quality. Reverb, I'd often do the same. Here I was able to get away with high quality, but normal sometimes. I was usually never able to use a drive block without exceeding that 90%. In order to get variations to the sound, I would often maybe map an external to the input driver or the master volume or something like that in order to get these changes to occur to the sound. Gapless switching also is not available for channels on the Axe-Fx 2. So you could do gapless scene changes, yes, but if a channel changes on a block, you get a gap in the performance, and I never liked those. So when I have the X and Y settings on the amp, I can't just change them or else I get a gap. So I'd use a compressor instead of a clean amp a lot of times. And I would just reroute things instead of change a channel to make things happen. So that was a bit of a set of limitations with the Axe-Fx 2. The Axe-Fx 3 comes with a heck of a lot more power, and I was able to split a lot of these things out and use a lot of those features I wasn't able to before. Over on the Axe-Fx 3, I've got quite a lot more going on here. So this is going to be my template preset that I copy around to my song presets. So my song presets, I do a preset per song, so that way I can tweak them individually. Over here are the After the Blast songs, some of the ones that we're working on over here, a little bit of empty space as we write more music, and then I've got covers over here in purple, either ones that the band does or that I play. And I may or may not flesh these out, but we'll see as we go. This template preset might be a little bit overloaded, Once you get to about 85% CPU, you get this warning error up at the top. Once you hit about 90, I've perceived real audio artifacts. But my intent here is once I copy this to a song preset, I can strip out the pieces that I don't actually need and hopefully bring the CPU back in check. To break down this preset, input 1 is my primary guitar signal. The first thing that hits is this pitch block, which will be bypassed by default. And my idea here is that this is an emergency block in case I snap a string. So let's say I'm playing in drop C. I snap a string. If I grab my drop D guitar, I can turn this pitch block on with the FC12 foot controller and then pitch the signal down 2 half steps. So that way I'm back into drop C and I can kind of run the rest of the performance that way. I've also got it set up where I can pitch it up too, and that's great. Got a wah block for those songs that need it. New to me, I'll be using the drive block for my tone. So I didn't have the CPU for that on the XFX2, but I got a ton of headroom to make that happen here on the XFX3. So I think I'm going to use it for little modifications to the tone where I can add a little bit more sizzle to a signal. Or I could do something more extreme in front of a clean amp and get a unique sound that way. So I have just a lot more voice options with the addition of the drive block. The amp block has 4 different channels. I didn't go over it before. The drive block, the pitch block, basically every block has different channels, and the XFX3 introduced gapless channel switching, which is totally awesome. So each of these channels can be an entirely different amp, and you can get a gapless performance by switching between them. So that is something that was a limiting factor on the XFX2. It's finally unlocked with the XFX3. So the way I'm usually going to set this up is channel A is probably the hottest guitar signal. Channel B might be a girthier rhythm channel by default. C is more for a crunchy sound. And D is more for a clean sound, is going to be how I set the preset up. And then I can make those modifications as I need them per song. On the cab, we have channels here as well. A is going to be my primary preferred cab. B is going to be a complementary cab that sounds good with A. And C is going to be a mix of both of them. So the preferred cab is going to be on the left side where I usually stand, and the complementary one will be on the right side. And then channel D I have available to do whatever I need for whatever tone I want to sculpt. Next up is a volume block. So I'm going to have this attached to a foot controller pedal. So that way I can adjust my volume via pedal. And like I said about the XFX2, I use a chorus block all the time to emulate that 2 guitar space with just one guitar. But I also have channels here as well for when I want to use chorus more as an effect, more traditionally. Delay and reverb I use all the time, but like I said, more channels, which is great. I can have multiple different reverb sounds just in this one block, which is great. And then output 1 is going to be my output. Input 2 starts to add a little bit of interest. So input 2 is a stereo input, a left and a right. I'm going to run the left signal as my piezo for my guitars. So I've got one guitar that's got a piezo outfit on it, and that runs independently from my signal up above, but that I'm splitting out with this gate that only listens to the left side, so that makes it entirely independent from this chain down below. Next, that's going to hit a parametric EQ that filters out the low end and the high end a little bit. The low end, particularly if I hit my whammy bar with the piezo activated, there's this loud thump. This helps get rid of that. Multiband compressor then accentuates different aspects of the EQ and brings the level more in line with my magnetic pickups. The signal then converges with the rest of the chain, so that way any downstream effects get merged in, and that'll go to output 1 as well. On the right side of input 2, I'm going to be running the singer's guitar through that. So just like the piezo signal, on the right side, this gate's going to only listen to the right side of the input. Now, the reason these are gates, if I'm running my piezo signal, I'm playing an acoustic part, that's going to open up the internal gate for input 2. Now, without this gate, once this gate is open, the singer's guitar then sends white noise signal, even if he's not playing, through his chain. So you get this white noise behind everything if I'm playing piezo without that. So the gates help quiet those two signals down and make them truly independent. The rest of this chain is just like my chain above: drive, amp, cab, volume, chorus, delay, and reverb. And that will go independently to output 2, so that way we can mix the singer's in-ears differently than mine. So that is one huge benefit of being able to add a second cab to the preset here. Input 3, that's the last one down here. I have the gate, again, listening to only the left side, and the gate, again, importantly, because of what I'm doing on the right side of this channel. I'll come back to that in a second. My intent is to incorporate the bass guitar into this Axe-Fx. So my bass player, he runs just a dark glass drive pedal, and that's his entire rig. Sounds great, and it's an easy thing to emulate with the drive block. There's the black glass type for this block that I believe is modeled after the dark glass foot pedal. So we're able to pretty well emulate that sound, but just like everything with the Axe-Fx, you can automate it. You can have different channels for different variations on that pedal. And you can automate these pieces. So even within one channel, you can have some variation in the drive or the mix. And that's just going to be super powerful, I think, where when my bass player brings his pedal in his bag, who knows what settings have been tweaked and how different it sounds. I think we can get a lot of consistency by running him in through the Axe-Fx. What I also have in this chain, just playing the bass guitar that I have here, a multi-band compressor helps to really bring the bass end up quite a bit. The mids are boosted a little bit, and then the highs, I don't have any compression running, so the ratio there is just 1. Next is a crossover. So this is a mixing technique that I think I can emulate really well with the Axe-Fx, is a crossover at about 110 hertz. The left side is going to bypass the drive, while the right side above 110 hertz is going to go through the drive to add the color of the tone. So the left side, those low-end frequencies, are really a foundational aspect of the bass guitar that really give you that consistent low end, no matter what amount of distortion and grunge you're putting in through a pedal. Those are then getting remixed into a mono signal, and then sent further on down. So I can add effects to him in this. So we've got songs where he's got delay, he's got a phaser, reverb. We don't play it live. He's sort of abandoned his effects pedal, but I think I'd love to get that back, and I think I'll have some space to do that. Unfortunately, Axe-Fx 3 only allows 2 reverb blocks, so I'm going to have to somehow share, and I think I can figure that out. I had some clever routing on-off manipulation when I used the Axe-Fx 2. I think I can do similar here. It's going to be a little tricky, but I think I can get it done. We don't always have a rhythm guitar playing, so that'll be helpful. Returning back to the front of input 3 here, the left side is going to be the bass guitar. The right side I'm going to have set up as a microphone input. Same goes for the left and right side of input 4. I'm going to run a raw signal from my mixer of my singer's microphone, my microphone, and the bass player's microphone. So that way, any one of us can make use of the vocoder effect somewhere in the future. The vocoder effect is something that I haven't seen too many people use. There's very few videos about it online. I went 8 years on my Axe-Fx 2 and never understood what this thing did. I found a few videos recently and got it figured out, and it's interesting. So basically, you have your instrument signal running through, and then the vocoder has a separate input that reads the envelope, I suppose, of what that signal is doing. So you can kind of overlay a vocal with your guitar signal. The most famous instance I can think of is the main riff of Livin' on a Prayer by Bon Jovi. So by having those 3 microphone inputs ready to go, I'll have that flexibility no matter what. And that actually brings me to all 7 inputs of the Axe-Fx 3 being used in the setup that I'm using. Back in Ableton, I've been prepping my file to get all the automation set up. Rather than doing scenes this time, I'm thinking I'm going to try to set this up with per effect tracks to automate these effects. So that way it's a lot more graphic. I can see where these things are happening. I have the parts of the song up at the top that I can easily reference on the grid and say if I'm right at the break here, I can see where that lands on the change here, and I can drag this accordingly and move it around. So I think that's going to be a lot more graphic for me to move things around. And I've got these set up where they change the channel and turn the effect on. So as you can see at the end here, I've got A, I've got B, I've got C. These represent the different channels, and all that's doing is a different envelope. So right now I've got a template song set up at the beginning, and then a baseline for all of these channels. So for the inputs, the drives, the amps, the cabs, and so on. For the things that will change commonly, the input, drive, amp, and cab, I have color coded so that way I can see, is it the hot channel A? Is it the more rhythm channel B, the more crunchy channel C, or the very clean channel D, roughly speaking. I'm going to do different things with all of these, so they will be switched independently. But all these are doing, these are only turning them on, so all the way full MIDI 127. The bypass turns it completely off, but the other thing is the channels. So channel 37 turns the effect on, channel 100, envelope 100, tells me which channel I'm using. So this is 0 for amp A, 1 for amp B, 2 for amp C, and 3 for amp D. Same concept goes for each of these, except they're going to reference a different envelope. But I think that's going to be a great way for me to very quickly build songs. And I actually made a template song of kind of how commonly I might arrange a song. So parts up at the top here. I don't have any one song that are these parts, but it's a pretty consistent arrangement of how I have a lot of songs, different lengths, maybe different parts here and there, but then different arrangements of my amps and cabs and chorus and reverb, just so I have them easily ready to go, and I don't have to, if I'm all the way here out in space and I'm trying to add a song, I don't have to go all the way back to the beginning to find my original MIDI blocks that I set up right here. This is a work in progress. So, I mean, everywhere you turn an effect on, let's say I want to jump around and I'm in practice. If I'm here in this part and I'm playing with reverb, I need, if I'm jumping over here, an off signal to turn that reverb off. And that needs to be across the whole track here. So I originally was just going to have an off signal there at the very end, so it was only graphic where it was happening. But I found out if I didn't have anything here, the reverb wouldn't turn off. It just had no signal to manipulate it. That was all. Few other things is with that same idea, I don't think I can have this other effects. I think I'm going to have one track per effect that's going to be used. And if I don't use it for that song, just don't write those tracks into that song. The inputs, like I said, I changed around a little bit, and I'm going to need to make use of gates for these automations instead of the inputs for the rhythm guitar here and for the bass guitar once I get that set up. But that's where I'm at right now. I've just wanted to share how I've gotten things figured out and how I think I'm going to work out in the future. Look forward to hearing what everyone has to say about it, and can't wait to share more with you.